there's a more subtle point here. In the United States, in order to be free of certain liability concerns, Twitter and Facebook have to put themselves out as what we call public forums. And this came up during the congressional testimony of Zuckerberg by Senator Cruz. And they actually do have obligations in terms of being free speech platforms if they don't want liability for the various things that are posted there. This is a matter of domestic United States law and the First Amendment as well. But in point of fact, actually, if you look up the safe harbor provisions and the public forum provisions of the relevant U.S. law, they do in fact have these obligations. And I'll ask Dana to include a link here to Senator Cruz questioning Zuckerberg during the hearings regarding that. And I do not advocate violence. I do not condone violence. I believe in nonviolent means to bring about social change. I am unaware of any position that Alex Jones ever took advocating for violence. I am aware that, like a lot of figures who the kind of more traditional powers that be in the media here feel threatened by, and not physically threatened, but just threatened by in terms of their place on top of the dung heap, if you will, that they put a lot of words in people's mouths. I look at how the Associated Press covers my case in particular, and they won't even use the words human rights. Nowhere in any of the AP coverage of any of my case does it come up that Justina even said ow. Does it come up that her family was put under a gag order and weren't allowed to speak to journalists? Does it come up that she was taken off of her painkillers? Does it come up that she was speaking notes to her family saying they hurt me all the time? So I'm very leery of a lot of the reports that have been written about figures like Alex. And on the opposite side of the political spectrum, figures like Lee Camp, who has also been supportive of me, is a liberal, and they, the New York Times takes shots at him, NPR takes shots at him. I mean, Barrett Brown, also on the left-hand side of this stuff, NPR takes shots at him. Other, so-called mainstream publications take shots at him. And it's really unfair what these individuals on both sides of the political spectrum go through, merely because they're willing to report on things that the mainstream media, for whatever reason, has been incentivized not to report on. If you read the AP coverage about me, I probably come off like a pretty bad guy. That's not fair. It's not objective. It's not good reporting. It's not honest journalism. And so I'm really leery of those things as they apply to these other figures, which includes Alex, but also includes these other guys on the other side of the spectrum. And each and every one of these people has proven to me to be a more reliable journalist with more integrity than the people slinging the mud in these particular instances. So do I stand by these people? Yes, 100%, every time. And it's not just Alex. And I hope that more people will as well. And if Alex actually has said something condoning violence or looking to institute violence, then I'd be curious to hear it. But I'd be very leery of kind of taking things secondhand or having people read into things that maybe was never there in the first place. I've written a lot of articles for InfoWars, more than I've written for the Huffington Post. I can tell you they are very careful about the stuff they publish. There are things that I wanted to publish that they had me dial back a little bit. So it just doesn't strike me as very likely that they would ever do that. And if what you're reading is something from perhaps the Associated Press or the New York Times or one of these outlets that appears to have a good reputation, but upon further inspection really should not, then I would encourage you to actually look to what was really said, because I think you might be surprised. And my love to Alex, my love to Lee Camp, my love to Barrett, my love to all the real journalists on either side of the political spectrum who are finding themselves under attack, finding their free speech under attack, finding themselves misrepresented, finding themselves defamed, finding themselves, misunderstood by a large swath of the public because they've been intentionally misrepresented by people who should not be allowed to call themselves journalists.